Hello everyone, my name is Kum Tatsan. Welcome back to this channel, and today we'll be looking at types and components of computer systems. This is the theory section of the Cambridge IGCSE ICT. Specifically, those writing exams from this year 2023, you'll find this very helpful. These are normally notes I use to update to teach my students. So, but in this video, what we'll be looking at is our main objectives are to look at hardware and software. Secondly, we'll look at the main components of a computer systems. That's what makes a computer a computer. And thirdly, we'll look at operating systems. And the fourth thing we'll look at will be different types of computers. And finally, we'll look at emerging technologies and their impact. So we'll look at a few emerging technologies and how they impact our daily lives. Now, with starting with the first objective, which is hardware and software. So the first question you might want to ask yourself is, what is hardware, or what is computer hardware? And a simple answer to this is all the physical components of a computer that you can touch and feel, you can see with your eyes. That is what we call hardware. So it must be physical, it must be something you can see, it must be something you can touch and feel. So that's what we call hardware. Also, you need to know that hardware can be internal or external. So all of what we have here are hardware. This is a system unit. Within the system unit, that is where you find your internal hardware. Outside of the system unit, you have external hardware. So this is a motherboard. What I normally tell people, or in my lessons, I'll tell you, just take this as a city. Within that city, you have different buildings or factories or whatever. Each of them has its own purpose. It has something it does. Some have accommodation, some buildings are hotels, some factories have, all of them, one way or another, they contribute to the growth of the city. So here, for instance, we have the CPU. Um, this is the CMOS battery. Here, your RAM or video cards. These ones have RAM, video card slot. No, this is for your RAM, and this should probably be for video, audio card, and the rest. So and these are just ports, different ports, USB, VGA, and the rest. So this is a motherboard which is found inside the system unit, and this is a RAM. All of them are found inside, so they are internal hardware, and the monitor here is external. Moving forward, if we want now to ask what is internal hardware, as I earlier said, they are found inside the system unit. System unit, this is system unit. Now, inside the system unit, you can find a motherboard, CPU, video card, ROM, sound card, RAM, and many others. And from there, we also have external hardware, as I said. These are simply hardware found outside the system unit, like your keyboard, mouse, printers, monitors, and the others you can think of. So those are external hardware, basically. Now, the next thing we want to look at is software and the types of software in a computer. So, software, in simple terms, to say software are what? Coded instructions or programs that control how the computer works and processes data. So whatever I'm doing now is somehow controlled by software. Me being able to record this lesson, it's a software that is controlling it. So all of this is what we call computer software. Now, in your computer, you have two major kinds of software: application software and system software. Now, what is application software? Application software are programs you use probably on a daily basis to perform specific tasks. Specific tasks in maybe you're adding two things together, like the calculator on your laptop, or you're typing a document using Microsoft Word, or you're doing some calculations in Excel. You could be editing softwares. It could be editing softwares like video, Photoshop. It could be Photoshop. It could be maybe graphics kind of. Yeah, that's the Photoshop. You could be drawing a house plan using AutoCAD. So those are all application softwares. Now, the next type of software is system software. This one is very, very important. Without system software, firstly, simply system softwares are operating systems. Later on, we'll look at operating systems in details. So, system softwares are operating systems and other utilities that enable smooth functioning of a computer. What do I mean by other utilities? The other utilities are things like antivirus, disk cleaners, compilers, linkers, and all those things. Those are other utilities that help your computer to run smoothly. Without an operating system, I won't be able to record this lesson. Without an operating system, I won't be able to be communicating with my computer. So we are going to look at that detailedly later. Now, so when we talk about system software, we're looking about your operating system like Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and the rest. Or you talk about antivirus software, you will talk about device virus protection, disk cleaners, compilers, and the rest. So that is it about software mainly and hardware. Now, the next thing which is very important is the fact that we have hardware, we have software. But at the end of the day, we want data. That is what is kind of more important to us, data. If I enter something, I want something to come out. As I'm speaking now, you are hearing, you have spoken, I've recorded, and you can hear me. There is what I'm saying now. I'm using a microphone to record my voice. That is analog data. And then what you're getting to is analog data. So basically, analog data is what? Physical data that changes smoothly from one value to the other. Smoothly means this can go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. When it reaches the optimum, it can drop. My voice, the pitch of my voice is not constant. It might go up, come down a little, go up, come down, just like that. So this is analog. Now, when we go to digital data, we're talking about 1 or 0. That means high or low. High or low. It cannot be in between. So it's either high or it's low. So you can have the data, it varies in discrete amounts, meaning if you want to vary by 2, everything will be like that. So I can either have a 1, I could have a 0, I can have a 1, or I have a 0. So this is how generally data is represented or enters a computer. What you need to also understand is the fact that when you speak through your microphone, your computer is not going to understand that. The computer only understands digital. So for you to convert your voice, which is analog to digital, you need an analog to digital converter, as we will see later. So here it is. As I'm speaking right now, I'm generating analog signals. Those signals, when they get through my microphone, they are converted using an analog to digital converter into digital, something like this, ones and zeros. From there, the digital signal is converted back to analog, which is what you are hearing at your own end now. And that is with the help of what? Digital to analog converter. So two things are happening, analog to digital and digital to analog. So right now, as I speak, you hear I'm speaking analog, is converted to digital. For you to hear what I'm saying, digital is converted back to analog, and you can hear it through your speakers or you are wearing headset. So that is the importance of all this. You need to understand when you type on the computer on your keyboard, you are entering analog, but the computer has been programmed to understand all those things. Now, the next thing which is very important is what are the main components of a computer? What are the main parts, or what what are the main things or features of a human being. So a computer has some main parts. Without these parts, the computer cannot do without them. For instance, if you look at a human being, there are some parts of your body you can do without, and there are some you can't do without. You can do without, maybe you can survive without a hand, you can survive without a leg, but without a probably you can't survive without your heart and some other vital parts. So it's kind of same with the computer. So some of these main parts of the computer will be looking at four main components: the central processing unit, the internal hard disk drive, the random access memory, and the read-only memory. So this is what we'll be focusing on. So this is the central processing unit, hard disks or SSD. These are all storage media, storage devices. Then we have the ROM and the RAM, which are all primary memories. Now, if we dive into them into more detail to get a description of them and some major features. The CPU, for instance, most CPUs are produced by Intel and IBM and probably other companies, but those are the most common CPU companies that produce CPUs. Now, firstly, the first thing you need to know is CPU. The CPU is the brain of your computer. So also you need to know that it has an arithmetic and logic unit, which what does calculations and logical decisions. When you're trying to do some calculations, it's actually the ALU of the CPU that does that. Then it also has a control unit which controls input and output devices. So that is another function of the thing the CPU does. And it also has what we call registers for storage of data being processed. So if you want to process data, it is temporarily stored in the registers and they get it once it's needed. Then this next main component is the read-only memory, random access memory. It's a very vital part of the computer. So if primarily it's an internal memory for temporal data storage. So it stores data on a temporary basis. So after a certain period of time or when you turn off your computer, that data is lost. So but it stores your data, it keeps track of what you're doing, it helps your computer to run very well. Secondly, you should know that the RAM is a volatile memory. So, which means content is lost when computer goes off, as I just said. That's the meaning of volatility, meaning the thing at some point will be lost or it doesn't last there for long. Then the RAM, you can write to it and you can read from it. Lastly, the RAM size. You can always increase the RAM size of your computer. Most computers, the RAM sizes can be increased. Probably that will help to increase your computer speed. Read-only memory, ROM. That one is also a primary internal permanent storage, so you can store data permanently as opposed to the RAM. You could be asked to compare the RAM and the ROM. You should know that the RAM stores data temporarily, while the ROM stores data permanently. Also, the RAM the ROM can only be read from. You cannot write to the ROM, but the RAM you can read or write to. You can read from it and you can write to it. Finally, the ROM stores what boot instructions of the computer, which is why they don't want you to write to the ROM, because if that information is altered, your computer won't be able to boot. So the ROM stores BIOS, that's basic input output system. It stores boot instructions. It stores the BIOS and starting up instructions of the computer and other instructions which are very important. Finally, we have our storage device. What we use to store data in the computer is very important. Imagine a human being without a storage place or where you have to store things. So similarly with the computer, it needs where whatever is processed, whatever data is found within it is stored. So that is what we call a hard disk drive or solid state. Most computers now have solid state drives which have kind of superior properties. So this is just a permanent storage You can store large amount of data equals to these two. You can store application software, that's where your operating system is stored, and other system files. So they can also be fixed or removable. The next thing we'll have to look at is input and output devices. So just a brief comparison of them. These two input and output devices will be looked at more detail in chapter 2. That's a whole topic on its own. So, but here, let's just briefly look at them. Input devices, basically hardware like keyboard, mouse, microphones. They help you to enter data into the computer. I'm entering data into the computer. Their outputs, they help you to see what you're working on in your computer. Listening to this lesson, you're using output. Seeing what is happening, you're using what? Listening to this lesson, you're using input. You're using output. Seeing what is happening, you're also using output. Then some people find inputs quite complicated to use, such as keyboard, whereas outputs, such as printers, you just send your print command. The monitor, you just need to watch, so it's much easier to use. So input devices can only send data to devices and not vice versa, which is very true. Uh, the output, they are only capable of receiving data, and then they generate output from it. So input, you just enter data, while the output, it just only receives and generates output. So these are some main differences between an input device and an output device. And under this main component of a computer, the other thing we need to compare is the internal memory and backing storage. Basically, internal memory is a primary storage which constitutes what the RAM and the ROM, and they are directly accessible to the CPU by the CPU. So, on the other hand, backing storage is permanent or storage of large amount of data. So that's where we permanently store data, like your operating system, files, movies, videos, and whatever. So that is stored on what, hard disks or solid state drive, depending on which you have on your computer. Now, the RAM and the ROM are much smaller in memory, while the backing storage like your hard HDD or SSD have much larger storage space. Now, the next thing is the RAM stores data temporarily, meaning your data is lost when your computer is turned on. The ROM stores data permanently, but it is only readable. But your HDD or SSD, your data is permanent. You can read, you can write, you can read, you can write as many times as it is allowed. Um, and also, you need to know that the RAM and the ROM have very fast data access times, meaning it's very fast. If you just request something from it, it comes within a few milliseconds. And as we earlier mentioned, they are directly accessed by the CPU. So definitely they need to be very fast. Whereas back in storage, the access times are quite slow. At times you open a file and it takes some time to load, but it's not the same case with the RAM and the ROM. Finally, the RAM and the ROM are what? Internal memories. Hence, they are internally fixed in the computer. But the hard disk drive or SSD, you can always remove it if need be. So some are permanently inside, while some you can connect it externally. And you could also even have multiple hard drives on the computer. Thank you for following, and if this video was helpful, you should subscribe and like the video. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions, and try my best to answer as soon as possible. See you in the next section of the video.